We had a little bit of a flood in our house. The toilet valve on our third floor bathroom broke open, and I lost some of my hard drive and network stuff. So we're missing the first half of this video where I cut the opening for this, which is my new router and router table insert plate. So I'm going to try to recap on how I cut this opening, and then we'll continue the video from that point. But it's nice. I have above the table adjustment for router. Real sweet deal. So let's show you how I did it. Okay, so here's the opening. And basically what I did is I made a took 4 pieces of wood and I pocket screwed them together to create a little frame, kind of like a face frame. I would, run 2 pocket screws here and build this square out. And this is the dimensions of the plate for the router. Once I got that into position, I double sticked it down and I used a flush trim bit to run along here and cut out the opening, right? The opening for the router. When all this waste was cleared out, I took my jigsaw and I cut this opening out, big enough to hold the router, leaving room to screw down the plate if I needed in these corners. So that's basically how I cut this opening. I showed everything, but I lost that footage. So, but basically that's how that opening was created, and it's about a 1/16 of an inch deeper than the actual thickness of the router plate, so I could make some adjustments. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to be doing is mounting the router. I have the router set here in the orientation that it's going to be. And I want it this way because in the front of my router is the lock as well as the switches right here on this side. So if I spun it around, it'd be hard to get to those 2 things. So I've kind of have that set in the right area so I know I can orient my plate. Now, I put the plate in, and I initially, on my first test at looking at this, I did this wrong. I want to make sure that my pivot pin is on my right-hand side, and there's threads right here for that pin to go in, and that's my fulcrum point. It's a safety feature that I was lacking on my old table. What I would do is instead of, I would pivot in, but I would kind of use my one hand to hold. With having that pin, it's just a lot easier and a lot safer, and it's something I'm looking forward to having on this table. But this fits in pretty nicely. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and orient this router. Now this Triton router has a couple features on it that are pretty beneficial. One of them is the ability to pull out the spring and use above the table adjustment of the router. So one of the things I need to do is I need to find and locate the hole. So one of the things I did was I noticed on my plate that goes on the top of the router, right, that there's a little notch where that bar goes, right? And just kind of, it's there on the plate as well as the base. Might hear my neighbor's baby. So I've gone ahead and laid out the plate, and I got the appropriate size drill bit and just kind of marked the hole, right? And I have the hole marked where I need to drill. So what I can do is now take the plate over the drill press, and I'm going to go ahead and drill this hole. Okay, I'm going to place this in that mark, make a nice little hole where I can go over to the drill press and drill it out. Okay, so I went ahead and clamped this in, and all I've done is lined it up. Now I'm not running dust collection here, okay? You don't want to really be running dust collection because I'm dealing with metal. This is aluminum. I don't really want it running through any of my blades on my dust collector. Plus, you got to worry if it was something that was a little more heavier like steel, you got to worry about hot embers hitting all that sawdust in either the separator or the bag. So no dust collection while you're running this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and drill this hole. Okay, I went in and chucked in a countersink, and I just want to countersink this a little, get the rough edge, make it a little easier to put the crank in and out. That's totally wrong. Whew. Gotta watch. I don't have that in the check right. Not only would that have ruined my piece, but that could really get kind of dangerous. One of the things I normally do, but I didn't, see, and I'm off again, is I usually give it a spin or two by hand. There we go. Right, so it's in there. A spin or two by hand to make sure I got it in that chuck. Okay, go ahead and now do it. Okay. Just a little bit of chamfer. And I'm going to do just a light one. Okay, so I'm back over here. I just have this sitting up here. Just want to make sure it goes through. And it doesn't. The hole is just a little too small. So I'm going to go ahead and just make it the next size bigger. I thought I lined it up good. I probably didn't. So I'm just going to go ahead and what I'll do is just make it a little bigger using the next size drill bit. Okay, so what's happening is the hole is fine. Now there's actually a little play in there. The hole's position is off a little. Okay, I went to a big box store and I got some screws. So I'm going to go ahead and just screw this on loosely. The plate didn't come with any screws. And the screws that came with the base plate really, I didn't think were beefy enough to hold the router upside down, which basically these screws are going to hold the weight of the router. Okay, well, there are some issues. This doesn't go in right because I drilled the hole in the wrong stupid location. Right? It should be that way just a tad bit. Not happy with that. Another thing is these screws are just a tad bit too long. They are the shortest screws I could find. I can go back and try in a different store. Okay, so I went and got 1/2 inch instead of 3/4 screws. And these should fit down there nicely. And they do. It'll be easier to clean out too than the Phillips, they're flatheads. and this screw, this hole is off. So I have a couple options. I can make the hole bigger. I don't want to make it too much bigger because then it will wobble. I can relieve some of the router. Not necessarily sure I want to go that route either. So I think I need to give it some thought. Okay, what I'm going to do is make this a little bigger. And this is where I went wrong, is I should have mounted this plate, boom, on it, the actual metal plate, and then figured out the placement of the hole, drilled it from the back side. Hindsight's 20/20. Okay, so what I did is I took a file and I wound up filing part of the router away, the little nib that was catching this. I mean, we were talking maybe 30 seconds of an inch that I had to just file away to make this come down and then ride. And there we go. Raise and lower. The bit, not too bad. I'll put in the other two screws and then we'll drop it in the router. Or in the table, actually. It is the router.